This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 328, a year in review. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Today we're talking about the year in review 2021. I'm Nick Laughlin, and today my co-hosts are, as usual, John Bacozzi. What's new with you this week?
So what's new with me? I don't know. I sometimes am late to the game when it comes to things and around home automation or making my life easier. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been on calls kind of later in the day, and the sun's gone down. And we've talked about home automation a bunch on this show. So, but my office lamp was still like connected to a light switch. It's actually, if you're watching the video, that light switch right over there. And turn the light switch on, light goes on. And I was noticing, like, I was on calls and the sun was going down. And I'm like, I'd really like to turn the office light on, but I don't want to get up from my call and go turn the light switch on, then come sit back down. And sitting in my closet over there, if you're watching the video, was a Philips Hue bulb. Just sitting there. It's been sitting there for a while. I got a pack of two. I used one of them. I didn't use the other one. And like, I finally in my head was like, you know what? I'm just going to put the bulb in the lamp on my desk. And like, I'm going to take this light switch and blank it out with just a faceplate, connect the wires, blank it out so it's always on. And then I'm going to go get a Philips Hue light switch and put it in place there. So when somebody walks into the room, they can turn the lights on, turn the lights off, whatever they want to do. But I also found out that I have a Sonos in my office here that has Alexa's virtual assistant. I'm not going to say the name because it's going to go on, but you can tell it. The other day I said, hey, turn the desk lamp on. And it said, hey, is that desk lamp in the office? And I said, yes, it is. Now it knows it's in the office. So it said, hey, from now on, you can just say, turn the light on. And so now I walk into the room and say, hey, turn the light on, and the light goes on. I say, hey, turn the light off, and the light goes off. So anyway, long story short, I'm coming into the 21st century home automation with a new desk lamp. That's it. That was a real long what was going on with me, but I found it fascinating.
Yeah, but when you simplify or automate something small like that, that's the biggest convenience, right? That's the best part of home automation.
I've got something similar in my office with my office lamp, so I can tell a device to turn it on. But I also have my home assistant because I basically start work. I'm usually in my office by 5:30 in the morning. So my office lamp automatically turns off at 5:30 Monday through Friday, turns on at 5:30 Monday through Friday, then turns off at 9 a.m. unless I'm not in the house. If I'm not in the house, it never goes on. Or if it turns on and then I leave the house, it turns off between 5 and 9. If I come back to my desk, it turns back on. So yeah,
it's a fun one. I set that home automation up with my Christmas tree because I like the Christmas tree to be on when I'm home. So like when I'm home, the Christmas tree's on. When I leave, the Christmas tree goes off.
Yeah.
So Stephen Cross is also joining us. What's new with you this week?
So this is sort of a weird update. So in the notes here, you see, I said I have a favorite new podcast. And this is just
choose your words carefully, Stephen Cross.
Yeah, well, no, because it's going to be like stupid is what I'm saying, actually, because everyone who listens to this podcast already knows what it is, but it's this podcast. So like after not being on the show for 6 months, and you guys have never experienced this, when you don't record the show and you don't prepare show notes and you're not involved on a weekly basis, you don't know what it's like to listen to this show as a podcast. And that's one thing that I've done over the past 6 months. In my feed shows up once a week, Talking Drupal. So I listen to it, and I got to tell you that I look forward to it every Monday or Tuesday morning to like fire it up and listen to it. So I don't know how anyone who's doing stuff with Drupal wouldn't listen to this, but everyone who's hearing this already knows that. But it's something I look forward to every week. So kind of a strange update, but
no, we love shameless self-promotion here.
Yeah, it is. I guess it's self-promotion, but I meant to mention this last update, but I already had a few other updates. So how about you, Nick?
Yeah, well, thank you for listening. Yeah. So for me, I think this is kind of a long running update. I've been struggling to find a graphics card for the last year and a couple of months. I had an opportunity last October, I think, to get a pretty good card. Decided to hold off on it a bit and think about it. And then the chip shortage started and the Bitcoin explosion really took off, and graphics cards have been impossible to find. And so I finally decided a few weeks
for
ago
a reasonable price.
Bite the bullet, and yeah, for a reasonable price. I mean, you could find a 3070 for $2,000-$3,000 or something, but I'm not willing to spend that. And so throughout the year, I keep looking and just could not find it. And I finally decided prices kind of stabilized a little bit higher than I'd like. So I finally found one at a more reasonable price. It's not as powerful as the 3070, but it's significantly more powerful than the one that I currently have in my computer. So I'm looking for. I just purchased it yesterday, so supposedly it'll be here in about a week. I'm looking forward to actually getting a chance to really try out my VR system that I purchased around that time last year, which is why I've been looking for a graphics card forever. So I'm it is around Christmas, but it wasn't really a Christmas present. It's been something I've been trying to get for, I don't think I've ever been trying to get a device for that long. And, since I was,
well, you're one patient guy, man, getting a VR system and not using it for a year.
Well, I used it for one game. I will say I used it for one game. I mean, the main reason why I got the Index is I wanted to play Half-Life Alyx. I did play that. I played that right here at my desk, so I had no room to move. I did take out the AT-AT at one point because I swung to throw something and knocked half the Legos off the desk.
That seems dangerous.
I finished that game. I mean, I had to at least use it once and see it, and it was a great experience, but it wasn't.
No, I mean using VR in a room full of Legos. That just
was. But I
need a VR room.
Then again, that's also why I've been waiting. So, like I said, I finally found a graphics card that was reasonably priced, shipped from Newegg is shipping it themselves, so they're trustworthy. And it's supposed to be here in a week, so hopefully I can finally get some use out of that system. Okay, so we have an update from the Florida Drupal Camp again. So if you are in the Florida area and you're looking to meet in person, as far as I know, it's still in person. We've got a little update from Mike, Adam, and Amy June.
Hi, this is Mike Herschel with Florida Drupal Camp, and holy cow, the Florida Drupal Camp site just launched. With me, I have Adam. Hey, Adam.
Hello.
Adam Barn and Amy June Highline, the Aaron Winborn Award winner. How's it going?
Thank you, Mike.
Adam, what are the dates for Florida Drupal Camp?
It is February 18th through the 20th, 2022 in beautiful Orlando, Florida.
Ooh, do you know what the average temperature is in Orlando that time of year?
I believe it's about 75 degrees Fahrenheit.
You are correct. Amy June, can you give us an overview of how many days this conference is?
It is a 3-day conference. Friday is trainings, half and full day. Saturday is a full day of sessions, and Sunday is sessions and contributions.
We have a brand new website, rockin' Drupal 9, brand new theme. It's at fldrupal.camp, and everyone who's listening is invited to this. And hey, Adam, are we going to have an alligator at the camp, like for real?
We are. We're going to have an actual alligator that you can pet and see and get your picture taken with, and he probably will not bite you. Probably.
Yeah, that's a maybe. But we're seriously going to have an alligator at the camp. And so check out the camp. Session submissions are open. Sponsorships are open. We have 2 of our 3 featured speakers announced. And yeah, so fldrupal.camp, February 18th through 20th, 2022 in beautiful Orlando, Florida. And we're in person. Holy cow. I know, right? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you guys for that update, and looking forward to hearing about everything that comes out of Florida Drupal Camp. And as the camp organizer myself, I'm also interested to see how the in-person logistics worked out. So looking forward to that in a few weeks, I think. So 2021 for Talking Drupal. So this is the year in review. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of our experiences. And I think the biggest one there were a couple of really big changes for Talking Drupal. And one of the more interesting ones for me was the 300th episode, which was a huge milestone for us. And I think if you go back and listen to the show, we talk a little bit about this, but I never expected the show to get there. When we first started, it was just kind of a little experiment, thought it'd be fun. And, what is the average podcast? 7 episodes, 8 episodes, something like that. Going into something like that, you never expect 8 years later to be still recording.
Never expected it to make it past 20, huh, Nick?
I mean, did you, John? Did you expect 300 episodes?
Maybe not 300. I mean, I thought we had a good idea and we had a drive to see it succeed. I am constantly impressed when I do the show intro, and we're at 328 right now, recording that right this second. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of content. I think over this year, obviously Talking Drupal's had some changes, and we've added some new kind of show features and changed the back office workings, if you will. And I mean, I think it's good, and I look forward to keeping it going.
So, Stephen, you mentioned this a little bit in your update, but one of the other big changes, our listeners obviously are aware of, is that you left the weekly show recording back in June, or was it May?
It was June.
June. And so you actually haven't disappeared from the back end. I mean, you're still helping out. You're still helping.
I'm not sure we ever discussed that though with the audience, did we?
Yeah. Maybe we should talk. I'd be curious to hear a little bit more what it's been like, at least in the first couple of months, just as a consumer of the show first, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, it's hard to say after the first few months of being a consumer, because I was like in the middle of it for 8 years. So the things started to change, and our listeners probably I don't think we have talked about like the transition. The transition actually started in February, right? Is when we decided to do this. And then in maybe March or April, we actually started to transition. And what the transition was it was a division of labor, which we probably should have done a long time ago. But what we did was I was pretty much doing everything other than the weekly recording myself. And then starting in March or April, I started to take those tasks, knowing that I was leaving at episode 300. We started to divide like the work up of putting the show together, there's a lot of work done before a show is recorded. There's recording the show, and there's a lot of work done after the show's recorded. And we divided that work up. So by the time episode 300 hit, I was already coasting, frankly. I mean, I had not been doing anything. I think the month before the 300th episode, I don't think I did show notes or did post-production on any of those shows. I think I just kind of showed up and recorded. So by the time we hit 300 for me, like I already had a foot out the door, kind of like the way to look at it for me. Like I had already, like the transition in my mind was already happened. It already happened. And like, I can't thank you guys enough for how smooth that transition went. Both of you guys like stepped up and just like, oh yeah, I'll take this. And like, it just went like crazy smooth. And I know it wasn't easy to do either. I tried to like set things up at the beginning of the year. We did more stuff in Trello that we had never done before to make this transition a little easier. Which was like sort of the reason why I did some of that stuff. So I wasn't just like walking away, and there was some structure in place. because probably 3 years ago there was zero structure. Like it was just kind of me, whatever I could kind of fit in at the time I did. And so like the division of labor, I think was huge. And so like when you say, what was it like the first few months? It was like I had already sort of transitioned out. It was very weird not being on the call. And it's actually still hard for me to listen to the show and not feel like I want to talk. Right. I still like am in that mindset of when I listen to an episode, I feel like I want to ask questions. And I would say that 95% of the time I'm thinking of a question and one of you guys asks it. Right. Which is great. Right. Like I can see that we're like kind of hitting the user questions because I have them all the time, because I've stopped myself from looking at the show notes ahead of time, although I have access to them. Every once in a while, if it's a topic I'm super interested in, I'll kind of go in and throw in a few questions here and there that you've probably noticed. But other than that, I wait to see what the final result is. And it's really been like I mentioned in my update, it's a great podcast. It really is. I mean,
I now have a vision of Steven like listening to the podcast in his office and being like, no, John, that's not right. I don't agree with that. And like just having this whole dialogue with the podcast, which is great.
That is funny.
Well, I do want to know. Sorry, I do want to know, what did you do the first week after, like episode 301, the time, because we record, at least for the last couple of years, we recorded at the same time, 11:30 on Tuesdays Eastern. Although right now we're not, what did you do during that hour and a half?
To be honest, it was pretty easy. Like I have a busy job like you guys do. So to pull something off my calendar was super easy to do.
You're like, hey, another free hour in the day.
But I have to admit, like the first 3 weeks or the first month, I downloaded the YouTube raw feed as soon as it was done. And I listened to those shows the same day they were recorded or the next day. I listened to the raw feed. And it's not like I was like anxious, like you guys weren't going to do a good job or anything. It's just like, it's like ingrained when you do something every week for 8 years, it's like a part of what you do. Right. And it took me 2 months to sort of get out of that mode. And I'm like in this great place now that I'm a consumer of the show. I'm still helping in the back end, right? So I think we say division of labor, one of the good things I think has happened, and I don't know if the listeners would notice this. Maybe I think newcomers notice it because maybe they're more aware, but I think we got a better social media presence. I'm trying to do some of that, which I hated doing before. I still hate doing now, but at least I have time to do it now. And doing a little bit of extra stuff on creating some extra videos on YouTube and stuff to maybe make the show a little bit more digestible for people who are looking for smaller pieces of the show. So those are things we're transitioning to. So I'm still involved, but as I am truly now a consumer of the content and not a creator of it.
And a programming note there for the listeners. If you have a topic that you want to share for us for 2022, throw that our way on those social media channels Stephen was talking to, or the Drupal chat. We definitely are building our content for 2022 and looking for people to come on the show and talk about things. Also, subscribe to YouTube, join the LinkedIn group. It's a blast. You should do it.
One of the other really big changes, kind of going back to the division of labor, just want to highlight a litlittle bit more behind the scenes. So John kind of took most of the before production tasks. So John takes scheduling guests, scheduling the guest host, scheduling which shows are actually being when. So like we have a Trello board and it kind of says these are the next 3 or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, depending on how far out he's planned. And having those show notes a few weeks before and kind of seeing a bird's eye view of the show has definitely been, I think, an improvement. It's been helpful. And then, I've taken most of the post-production tasks. So, I've been doing the YouTube and podcast editing, publishing, Patreon, those kinds of things. And for the first few months, I also was handling social media. So I was doing, the newsletter, Twitter, thumbnails, things like that. And so Steven recently started doing the social media aspect of it. So he's been doing producing the thumbnail, which he is far better at than me. I like to think I've gotten a handle on the show editing, but creating assets like thumbnails and, newsletters, I just don't have that talent. So I'm very grateful that he's taken that back on. But yeah, it's been breaking it up. So, John kind of does the pre-show, pre-production planning. I do the production, and then Steven's kind of done the post-show communication. I think that division of labor, again, I wish we had done this years ago, because I think it just gives a slightly different spin on each piece of it. And it just means that, not everything is resting on one person's shoulder, which makes it a little bit easier to manage week to week, I think.
It's given me some insight. When you're in the show, doing the show, it's hard to see the content the way consumers see it. So sitting where I am right now, I get a much better feel for like the flow of the show. And I've made some suggestions for minor changes here and there, and ways that the consumer can consume the show better. And like in 2022, I can see that we can continue to make some improvements to make the show more consumable. And there's one last note I want to make before we leave this area is, I think one of the best improvements since June and since Nick has taken over the production of the show is the timeliness and the regularity, which I was never able to stick with. I could stick with it for 2 or 3 months at a time, and then I'd fall off. But the show has basically come out, I think, except for one show came out on a Tuesday, I think. I think everything has come out on a Monday regularly for 6 months, and that has been great.
Talking Drupal, now on Prunes. It's a regularity joke for you folks, you older folks out there. So another honor. I was just going to say another honor that was bestowed on Talking Drupal, and a first, quite frankly, I think for us that happened this year, was the three of us being able to do a live, I'm using air quotes for those people who can't see me, live recording of Talking Drupal and keynoting Drupal GovCon, right? That was super fun. And well, I'm speaking for myself. It was super fun for me as somebody who likes to speak at conferences. It was my first chance to keynote. And I think it really was a little insight into, into Talking Drupal in a pseudo live format.
If you haven't heard the keynote, it's about contribution, non-code contribution to Drupal or any open source project. So it's really like our experience as podcasters being considered contributors to an open source project, even though it's not code. So it was us reflecting on that topic. So it would certainly hit home with us.
Yeah, and it's also the first show that we rehearsed.
Yeah, true.
Because it was a talk, we had to make sure that, we wouldn't have a chance to edit it in post. Not that we do a whole ton of editing, but yeah, I think we rehearsed it 2 or 3. We met several times to kind of put together the agenda, but I think we rehearsed it a couple times too, which was interesting. I think it came together really well. It was a lot of fun. I do remember still, I think you guys were meeting with the organizers of GovCon about something when they asked you. So I wasn't actually part of that. You're like, hey, by the way, what would you think about doing the keynote at GovCon? I was like, oh yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, good, because we already accepted it. But yeah, it was a good time, good topic, and we'll definitely have the link in the show notes.
Yeah, I think that the other aspect there that's why we rehearsed was that we had a very specific time slot we had to fit into, 45 minutes to an hour, and
we're not good at that.
If you're a listener, sometimes we go long. We get on a topic and we just go with it. So rehearsing in that vein was useful.
And before we leave, talking Drupal for 2021, I wanted to bring up one more thing, which is we did add guest hosts this year.
It's true.
Oh yeah.
And I think we did that early in the year, right? That was probably February timeframe,
March.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's that gone?
Yeah. I think it's my favorite thing that we've done as far as like changing something for talking Drupal.
Yeah.
I think another thing we've also done in the last 2 years, not just 2021, we've also had much more consistent guests. I think we used to go much long. We'd have maybe one guest a month or a couple guests a month. I think this is the longest we've gone without a guest this episode in 2 years. This is the third episode without a guest. And so I think those two things, like having somebody else's perspective, not just for a week though on a particular topic, but have their perspective for a month, month and a half has been fantastic. And yeah, definitely an addition that I'm glad we made.
So we're going to continue that in 2022. Is that your plan?
That is our plan. And yeah,
Any
I think
hints
it's been great. And we're actually in 2022 looking at maybe extending the guest host stint. So it's not just 4 episodes, but possibly 6 episodes. So yeah, we have obviously Steven's joining us now, and then we have a couple people lined up for early 2022. So
no official announcements, John. You're gonna wait on that?
No, we're gonna wait. I like it to be a surprise.
All
I
right.
think it's more fun for the listener. And also, again, I will say, along with the topic, if you have an idea for a guest host or somebody you'd like to hear, reach out, let us know, and we'll do our darndest to.
Could be fun to having a listener join us, right?
To get us on the show. Yeah, we could do that. We are up for any suggestions.
Yep.
So,
and you're interested in Drupal and like to talk, then you're a good fit.
It's true.
So let's move off of talking Drupal. We'll stop talking about ourselves for a few minutes and reflect on just some other things.
A little awkward.
Yeah, reflect on some other random things from Drupal and non-Drupal in 2021. So let's start with like the big one, Drupal 8 End of Life. I mean, to me, it seems like it's gone pretty smoothly. I mean,
does anybody miss it?
No, I think my guess is, this is only my guess, that there's a lot of people who are still on it.
Yeah, I still have probably, I think I have 3 sites that are still on Drupal 8.
Yeah, that's my guess.
If I'm being totally honest. Yeah.
And
they're
Nick, you have migration plans in place, or like they're just kind of riding on Drupal 8
Oh, yeah.
without any worries?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is the sites that aren't on Drupal 8, that are still on Drupal 8 rather, they're like kind of one of 2 classes. One of them is they're a larger company that has a ton of sites, and there were some higher profile ones that needed to be updated first that were more complex.
So they've got a queue. They have a queue of sites that are getting fixed, right? Yeah.
Yep. And then the other class was kind of smaller clients that just had to kind of prepare budget for it, and and then when they got the budget and time was just too close to holidays, so you just need to wait until the new year. So but yeah, I think the biggest pain point that I found with Drupal 8 wasn't the update itself. It was the fact that it's out of order from Drupal 7. I find
so confusion.
Yeah, there's some confusion around. Like I've had conversations with people that have told, like point blank, told me no, Drupal 8 isn't end of life because it's next year. Drupal 7 is end of life next year.
Yeah, it's weird.
And having to kind of say,
you're like, nope. Let me draw you a diagram. Here's why. Here you go.
And so yeah, there was some confusion. Some people, still, migrating stuff to Drupal 8 rather than Drupal 9. I am finding some sites that I upgraded a few months ago. There are some quirks that are coming up, particularly around things like plugin definitions changing. That you just have to run an update hook to fix that. But there are a couple of things that I'm finding that might have been missed in the update process and weren't particularly visible at the beginning, but now a few months in, they're starting to crop up. And I expect that will happen over the next 6 months or so, but nothing too drastic. I mean, it was definitely, I mean, sites that took 2,000-3,000 hours to build with a team of 4 or 5 engineers, in my experience, took less than 100 hours to migrate to Drupal 9.
See, in my rose-colored glasses view of Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 migration, when Steven asked about not hearing much about the end of life and the upgrade process, I just assumed everybody was already on Drupal 9 and their upgrade was flawless, and they were just continuing on in the Drupal upgrade path. But yeah, I think, Nick, your scenario is not unusual, where there are clients that have either custom coded things or have certain modules that they're relying on that they're upgrading or waiting to upgrade before they get to Drupal 9. I will say, upgrade process way easier, right? It doesn't require a site rebuild. You have the ability to go from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, which is nice.
I mean, it was an upgrade in the sense of an upgrade.
It was an
like
upgrade.
Previous ones where upgrade really meant rebuild. I mean,
correct. Yeah, exactly. However, our next note here is, and Nick just alluded to this, is the Drupal 7 end of life, right? That's quickly coming up. And I think I've talked to a few people in various different groups within the community that I'm in, and it seems like there are a lot of Drupal 7 sites out there, and people are kind of scrambling to figure out how they migrate, upgrade, move from Drupal 7 to either Drupal 9 or something else possibly.
Right. Yeah, the Drupal 7 thing opens the door to make bigger decisions.
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations are just going to bite the bullet and finally rebuild on Drupal 9.
I mean, I think a lot of the issue area that I'm seeing for Drupal 7 is organizations that don't necessarily have the funds to upgrade to Drupal 9, right? Because that's a complete rebuild. It's not as easy again, air quotes, as going from 8 to 9, right? It's rebuilding the site completely. And granted, you can use Migrate API to move data over a little bit easier, but in specific, I think nonprofits, right, don't necessarily have a ton of cash to throw at a new web build right now, which is concerning. I wonder if there's going to be a market for long-term support for Drupal 7.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've already made clear that there will be an LTS, just like there was for Drupal 6. And yeah, that was, that's where I was going. Like, a lot of people will stay there. A fair amount of people will probably move to Backdrop. And I'm sure a lot of people will just keep their site on Drupal 7 and never do anything.
But is moving to Backdrop an upgrade, or is that like the same as going to Drupal 9?
I think it's an upgrade.
So, is it? They have a much more limited module set. From listening to the episode you guys recorded, right? That I listened to, I get the impression there was and I could be wrong, that there was a much smaller module set that they support in Backdrop. So you're going to have similar issues that you would have if you went to 9.
Well,
consider
the impression that I got was, and I remember asking this specifically, the upgrade path from Drupal 7 to Backdrop is fairly straightforward. Somebody experienced in Backdrop can do even a complex site in a day.
Oh, okay, that's great.
And a lot of the modules that would be in contributors in core and their Drupal 8 stuff. So like things like quick edit and those kinds of things. So you get those improvements of Backdrop, but you're still basically on a Drupal 7 code base.
This could be a big Backdrop year, right?
Yeah, that's
what I'm
expecting, that they'll see adoption.
It will be interesting to see when you guys do your review, this sort of same show, at the end of next year to see where this is in Drupal 7. This is a major change for Drupal. Like, there's lots of sites in 7, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. And actually, you might not really know, right? Because it will only be a month old at this point next year. You might not really know the impact of it until like mid 2023.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate, especially with long-term support. Like, you know, if people jump onto the long-term support bandwagon, like that could be, you know, that could be a year down the road. It could be 2 years down the road.
Right.
I mean, I think part of my, I don't know, I'll call it a gripe for lack of a better term, but like part of my gripe with, you know, Drupal 7 sites and some of these organizations is like, should have been on somebody's radar for quite a while now. And it, you know, the Drupal community extended the end of life. So now you've gotten essentially an extra year, right, to plan for it. You know, I think if you can't figure out what to do by the time November 2022 rolls around, like, and you know, what to do is, you know, variable. It could be go to Drupal 9, it could be go to Backdrop, it could be go to something completely different. You have to do what's right for your business, right? Or your organization. But I mean, I think you got plenty of time. Like you gotta get on it and start thinking about those things and making the move.
I think if you're considering a rebuild, like if you have a significant site and you're doing a rebuild, you're coming close to being out of time.
No, you're out of time. I think you're all done.
Depending on the size of the site, you could be like out of time. So
right. I mean, I guess a larger site.
Yeah, you need to be considering a transition plan. Maybe it's an LTS for 6 months, to during a bridge period, that kind of thing. So it's going to be a fascinating 2022 when it comes to D7.
I think another thing that you'll see too, and I think we talked about this with somebody, I'm not recalling who though, is just converting some Drupal 7 sites to static sites. You know, because a lot of Drupal 7 sites are fairly static at this point. I mean, Drupal 7 came out 10 years ago.
I know.
So not everything has active.
And when you start to evaluate your sites too, you could, you know, be looking at Drupal 7 site and say, you know what, you know, 40% of the site could be a static site. So we could potentially like move 40% of our site to static and then engineer 60% in Drupal 9. You know, I think there's lots of those kinds of things that are going on.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many different ways as with Drupal, and I say this all the time, so I sound like a broken record. There are so many different ways to solve the problem, right? You know, whether it's a static site, whether it's like a headless site, just migrate the content into Drupal 9 and then, you know, go to more of a static front end. You know, so many ways to do it. And I think you're right, Stephen. It'll be an interesting end to 2022 and you know, into 2023 to see what happens. So let's move on to something near and dear to my heart, virtual conferences. And, you know, 2021, at the beginning of 2021, I think we all thought like, we're not going to have to do virtual conferences. We'll be able to meet in person. And, you know, the pandemic and coronavirus had a different plan in mind. So we did more virtual conferences in 2021. And I'm just wondering if any of them stood out to either of you, anything that you took part in or that you saw that was kind of
GovCon keynote,
kind of different. The GovCon keynote. Okay. So, I mean, okay, that stood out to you because you were doing it and it was different. I will give you that. Right. Anything else, Nick? Did you go to a bunch of virtual conferences this year? Or were you kind of like conferenced out?
I mean, I'll be honest, the only conference I went to was NerdCamp. And it was BoffCon again this year. And I'm a big fan of the format, huge proponent. So I definitely.
So Nick, but it's safe to say, isn't it safe to say your virtual conference attendance matched your in-person conference attendance? Like you didn't. No, really, you didn't go to conferences much at all anyway, right?
Yeah, I usually go to there's only 3 conferences I typically go to: Nerd Summit, D4D, and NetCamp.
Okay.
And NetCamp's the only one that's a sure. Usually, if I go to Nerd Summit, I may not make it to D4D,
Right.
and vice versa.
Right.
But yeah, those are usually the conferences I make it to.
Okay, then I'll pivot to Steven. Steven, any virtual conferences that stood out to you this year?
I would say that there's none that stood out to me. I think I have more of a general comment in that, I mean, this whole virtual conference thing is new in the past year and a half. So I think they'll just continue to improve over time and people will get comfortable with them. And I think they're going to be a great option for us moving forward. I think it's I like in-person conferences, but I also did like the ability to jump into a conference for a half a day or for 3 sessions and then leave. I think that it's a good option for people to learn. It's a great option for people who attend that don't have the funds or don't have the ability to get to a conference. So I think this certainly over the past year and a half has opened up the opportunity for more people to present, to attend, to be a part of it. I don't think they're superior in any way to in-person conferences, but a great alternative. And I just think it's going to be great moving forward. So I'm interested to see what it looks like 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah, I agree. I think the accessibility that it provides a conference to bring in folks from other regions and provide them the content is super important and great. I personally have to say that I think I'm virtual conferenced out. Like, I don't know, like towards the end of this year, I was kind of like, no more virtual conferences. I just can't do it. We did the keynote at GovCon, which is great. I helped out with Drupal Camp Colorado, which was awesome. They had more of a summit sort of day and a session day, and I even did the New York Drupal camp. So I kind of was all over the place with virtual conferences, but I think overall, from a speaker standpoint, virtual conferences, depending on the format, can be hard. When you're doing like a Zoom keynote, there isn't a lot of feedback that you're getting from the audience, which as a speaker is hard. Like you typically, when you're in a room with somebody, right, you're looking at them and you can, if they're nodding and smiling, like you're like, okay, I'm doing all right. If they're like sleeping or like not paying attention, then like maybe you need to shift the topic. I think it's hard to deliver in some of those formats. And I just think, I think I'm kind of done with virtual, at least for right now. But I do love, for all the reasons Steven stated, I do love the accessibility. I do love the fact that it brings in new folks to the content that was otherwise isolated by travel and location.
I think you better buckle down for 2022, John, because I'm not seeing the future of conferences changing much. I know people have scheduled a lot of in-person conferences. But I don't think it's trending that way as something that's going to be reality. Like we're going back to the way a lot of things were a year ago. We're heading back there now, right?
Yep. So this next segment hopefully will be a little bit happier, rosier, and definitely one of the sections I always like to talk about in these types of shows, and that is all of us are kind of tech people. We like to tinker a bit. I'm curious, Steven, what tools or apps have you started using in 2021 that are different, that kind of stood out to you?
So I've got 3 things that like jump out to me as I look back, because I'm always tinkering. I'm always looking at new stuff, always trying new software, and probably I'm over excessive in that area. But there's 3 things that jump out at me, the changes or tools that I use that have dramatically changed for me. One is a split keyboard. I switched to that probably 4 months ago now. It was probably after I left the show, I think. I did it for physical reasons. I was having lots of shoulder pain. I mean, like a couple of years worth of real bad shoulder pain within weeks of switching to a split keyboard. it's virtually gone. I mean, the day-to-day pain is no longer there. I've had people question me if it's mental that it's gone. I don't think so, but I can tell you it's not there. I am still in a transition after 4 months with the split keyboard, but I'm probably better at typing than I have been ever in my career, which is not saying much for me. But that has been a big change for me. Love it.
So
Yeah, a question there.
yeah, so I got a split keyboard as well, kind of just following on, figuring I might as well get a more ergonomic setup myself. And I have to say, I don't know what it is. I just have not been able to, and I've spent a good,
I know what it
I've spent
is.
time where I've just said, okay, I'm going to switch.
You have to get rid of your old keyboard. Do you have the old keyboard on your desk? Do you have the old keyboard on your desk? Then you'll never switch.
I don't
That's
know.
the way it
Though.
is.
I think it's not. I don't think it's the fact that it's split. I think the problem that I have is that the keys are ortholinear. I think that is the change that causes me so much trouble. So what I mean by that is if you look at the normal keyboard, all the keys are offset a little bit, but the split keyboard, everything's in line.
Right. But ergonomically, that's better because your fingers move straight up and down.
That's what they say. Yeah. That's what they say. But I think the other thing too is I think the other piece of it is my typing. It's not that my typing speed is slightly slower between the two. I mean, even after 2 months of using it, my typing speed generally, I'm not the fastest typer in the world. My typing speed on a normal keyboard is between 70 and 90 words per minute, right? On this new keyboard, even after 2 or 3 months of using it, I struggled to hit 40. And it's just that when I need to do something, I just I am thinking so much faster. Oh, I just switch back. I have to.
I'm telling you.
So, okay.
All the research I did beforehand was everyone said, until you get rid of the old keyboard, you will never improve.
So I gotta agree with Steven here. I think you gotta ditch your keyboard for a week or two and
no, you have to ditch your keyboard. It's not for a week or two. You need to ditch it. That's how you will retrain your brain.
And then with
your brain knows you can do it. You know you can do it. You know you can do it faster somewhere else, so you'll never improve.
So here's my plan. So like I said at the beginning of the show, I just got the new computer.
You don't need a plan. You just unplug it.
No, here's my plan. So I got the new computer. I'm going to move the other keyboard down to that computer. And after 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, I'm still having trouble. I'll just swap them. Because I didn't get it necessarily because I have the shoulder pain.
Right.
I got to kind of prevent that long term in the future.
I think you should.
But if I
should commit more than 2 weeks, I think you should. If you ditch it, commit yourself to at least 4 weeks of not using the old keyboard. At least a month.
Yeah, I mean, just don't keep it around as a crutch, right? Because you're always going to default to I could do it faster on this thing.
That's exactly what I did for the first 3 weeks. I had the split keyboard and I had the old keyboard in the middle, and I did the same thing all the time. I would struggle, and then I just jump in the middle to do something, and then I come back, and I never improved until I got rid of that keyboard.
So you had the keyboard in the middle?
Yeah, I pushed. I had the split keyboard, and then right above it, sort of in the middle of it, I had the old keyboard. So I would kind of jump up there and do things.
I feel like I can never get them oriented in a way that my hands are comfortable.
Right.
They always feel like they're at the wrong angle.
You guys need to orient like this. If you orient like this, you just.
What? No, I can do that. But I think the problem I have isn't that they're split. I think the problem is that the keys are ortholinear. Yeah. So I just.
It's really meant to, it's a lot of retraining of something that you've done naturally for a long time.
And again, for listeners who aren't maybe as smart as Nick, ortholinear I think means that their keys are in a straight line as opposed to offset.
And so like if you think about it and when you start to use it, to me, it makes way more sense now. My fingers are never going crooked to type on stuff. All my fingers do is go up and back. They go forward and backwards, and that's it. That's the only movement they have, which is the natural movement for your fingers, right? It's not that they go to the right and to the left. Yeah. So to me, I mean, I wasn't a good typist. I'd never got up to 70 anyway, I don't think. But I'm definitely improved from where I've been.
I wonder if that's some of it too. Like the magnitude of the difference between
absolutely could be
keyboard
but I've watched before I invested in this. I watched a lot of videos and people who were very fast typists took them a long time. They said like 6 months before they were back to where they were.
Yeah. Like, because I don't have that physical pain driving me, like, I don't know if it's worth retraining because I still have it. And so if I do have that pain, I can always like bite the bullet and learn.
Yeah.
So not for nothing.
Like I said, the new computer's coming.
I bought a Synology sometime in the past year. And it's basically a NAS. And slowly, like I've like shut off all my Apple cloud stuff, all our photos now on our phones, because we use Apple devices in the house for phones and iPads and stuff. All of those photos now is syncing to this. And I feel like I'm finally in a place that I'm organized and my data won't get lost. And it feels super good. So that was an improvement for me. And maybe I bought it in 2020, but I certainly took advantage of understanding it and backing it up to the cloud, and all that stuff is working well for me now. So super like that. The last thing for me is like listeners from me before know that I spend a significant amount of time playing with Raspberry Pis and stuff. This year, like I've gone from this journey of like a year ago trying to figure out what a Raspberry Pi did to this year now, like using microcontrollers and coding on those. And it's just turned into a super fun hobby for me. So, and I got to sort of thank Linux for this. I mean, Linux is like sort of the basis for most of this stuff. And once you like sort of decide that you're going to learn Linux, I mean, you can then like do anything on any size computer, anything. And it's been a fun thing for me this year.
So that ties in nicely to my first point here, which is Linux. So this year I had asked Stephen to put Pop OS on an old MacBook Pro that I had. So previously, you may remember, or maybe not, because I never talk about Linux. But previously, Stephen had created a ThinkPad with Linux on it, and I was kind of like,
it was an old computer.
Yeah. This thing's a little clunky, a little hard to use. Like trackpad was kind of a little older, but it kind of got me into it a little bit. This year, I switched to this MacBook Pro, and that didn't necessarily do it for me. But what did do it for me was that Pop OS introduced gestures, which were similar to the gestures that you have on a Mac computer
trackpad,
and on a Mac trackpad, and like. Now I have a Linux computer that I'm using primarily for development for my personal site. I don't really it's not a daily driver, but I do use it for making updates to my personal site, and I've actually gotten more into making updates on my personal site, not maybe because of Linux, but it's been so great using it that I just kind of jump in there and I do what I need to do, and it's been super, super accessible. So Linux for the win. Still a Mac user, so don't throw me out of that camp, but using Linux a little more. The other thing, which is kind of weird, I talked about it at the beginning of the show, was my Sonos has the Amazon personal assistant on it, and just having that Sonos speaker in the office, being able to stream podcasts and stuff has been great. But then being able to use the personal assistant to turn on lights, turn off lights, ask a question, answer a question. Again, first a word device that I have has been great. So I think that's interesting. And I will say, last but not least, this is for all the parents or aunts and uncles out in the audience. So on Prime Day, Amazon puts Fire tablets on sale. And beginning of this year, we went on vacation with some friends of ours, and they were swearing by the Fire tablet because they were able to give it to their kids in the car. The kids were able to like do things, watch videos, like do all of this stuff, right? And I was like, interesting. So shortly thereafter that trip, I on Prime Day, I actually picked up some Fire tablets for my kids, and like it's super interesting to see them just jump into that ecosystem and be able to like watch a show when we're on the go, or be able to, for example, my youngest has a Lego game that he was playing the other day, where like he's taking different parts and sliding them over and building like Lego things within this game, and like, fire trucks, helicopters, all sorts of cool stuff. So it's super interesting to see them kind of use technology and be able to have a little bit of independence on a device like that.
You know what? I have one right here, actually. I use it all the time. Bought it like a year and a half ago or so for like $40. It was like on a sale, like maybe around Thanksgiving. But even at full price, these tablets are great for just watching movies, playing like all the stuff John named. And it's not the price tag of the Apple product. It's like even the cheapest Apple iPad, this is probably half the price, and a quarter of it if you get it on sale. Good values. They're great for like, I just use it for watching YouTube and videos.
And I will say, I guess I buried the lead here, but the reason it's great for kids is you can get versions that have like an outer coating, a kid's case on them. And they also come with a kid's profile that kind of you can get enabled by default. And then you kind of have control over what's being installed and like different age levels and appropriate content and stuff like that. So all kind of really like built in, makes it nice and easy.
Very cool. Well, my update is a little bit different. This year, I've really gotten into kind of owning my own media again, rather than just streaming. So I think I've mentioned this before, but I discovered late last year or a little bit before that a lot of older television shows you can get really cheap on DVD. On like eBay or even just in the store, you can usually get them for $2, $3, $4, $5 a season. And so over the past year or so, we've just been picking up complete seasons of shows that we'd like to see or want to watch. And I've been The Office, Friends, Homeland, The Simpsons.
Wait. Back up a second here. So you are buying these shows on DVD and then like burning them to like a Plex server?
Yeah. I mean, I'm using Jellyfin, which is an open source type Plex thing, but yeah, basically. So we can watch them on any Roku in the house, but so we have that convenience, but it's media that I own. Or for example, we just got the entire 8-film Saw series for $9 at Target. And we like horror movies, so we picked it up.
So I gotta ask the question, and I don't know, maybe a listener is thinking this as well. What's the benefit other than like owning it yourself? What's the benefit of buying it and putting it on your own media server versus like just paying for, I don't know, whatever service to stream it?
Yeah, so paying the service, I have to have internet for it to work. And then I have to assume that service is going to be around. Like, for example, I was seeing something recently where people paid for HD movies on Google's like YouTube has like some sort of integration where you can purchase movies. And sometime last year, they decided that HD was taking too much bandwidth. And so even though they purchased HD, they can only watch them in 420 or 720p and it's been over a year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think owning it yourself is benefit in itself. But like I said, especially older stuff, like again, we got Nightmare Before Christmas and it was like $3 or something at Target, brand new. So I know it's not like I'm buying a pirated version of it, I'm buying it from a major retailer, but
It would cost you that to rent
these older
it.
ones on DVD.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I own it.
Yeah.
And
Are you keeping the DVDs after you burn it to the media server?
yeah, of course.
I don't know. I've never really been big into like movies, like some people are, and that's cool. Like, but I don't know. I also don't want like DVDs hanging around my house, I guess, like taking up space.
I mean, the collection hasn't grown enough that my Lego collection isn't much more of a space concern at the moment.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
clearly Nick likes to collect things. He's got Legos and DVDs. There we go.
I mean, if DVDs become a space problem, then yeah, maybe I'll consider getting rid of them at some point. But for now, I've just been copying those. So,
and all that information is being stored where?
On
your Synology. Okay.
Yep.
It all comes back to the Synology, folks.
Yep. Okay, so let's do a bullet round maybe for these next couple of sections. Stephen, what's your favorite moment of 2021?
So I don't have a particular moment. I have a reflection. So I'm about 20 years ahead of John with kids, and something that became very apparent this year to me after both of my girls are now out of college for a few years. Quite a few years. One of them is that it's been awesome to see my kids become adults. Like, and they don't become adults in my mind until they're like sort of financially independent and like they're doing their own thing, and you build this different relationship with them. And that I feel like solidified in 2021. So it's been really cool to see. And like for Christmas, I'm going to visit my daughter who lives in Arizona, and it's just it's a new stage of life. It's completely different. And it's been a super awesome year from that side.
Very cool. How about you, John?
So I have two things, and one of them is kind of along the lines of Steven's thing there. But in 2021, I actually switched jobs, which was not necessarily a favorite moment, but it was a big shift for me. Previously to this year, I had always worked in an agency environment, smaller companies, and I now work for a really large company, working with really large clients, and it's been great. It's been a welcome change, and it's very interesting to see like be out of the agency space and in working for some of these larger companies. So I think that was a big one for me. And then along with Steven, Steven's kids kind of moved out, kind of doing their own thing, being people. My kids are just growing up, and it's interesting to see them, see how much they've matured over the last year. And especially my oldest, very, very much more independent and kind of doing and thinking on his own, and it's great. It's really great.
So John, we used to see your kids frequently before COVID. We'd see each other relatively frequently. So I kind of saw your kids often, and I received your Christmas card in the last day or so, and could not believe how JJ looked. He looks so much older, and he's got that huge head of hair. I haven't probably seen him in like 2 years, I'm guessing. I don't know if it's been that long, but wow, I could not believe how
for listeners, my son has pretty long hair. He actually got a haircut the other day and took like an inch and a half off, I think it was. Yeah, he is like, and even my younger son is like, some days, and Steven's probably done this when his kids were younger, but like some days you just look at him and you go like, oh, he's like a little person, like he's like, he's grown up. So Yes, I'm getting that a lot because of the pandemic. We have not seen some people in quite some time, and they've gotten their Christmas card and they've said, "Wow, like the kids are really growing up." And I'm like, they tend to do that.
So for me, again, it's not like any one particular moment, but for me, like we've been even more so than last year. We've been cooking a lot more at home, which has been a lot of fun to get back into that, spend a little more time. And kind of in line with Stephen and John, seeing Kitako grow up and become more mature has been great. Just kidding.
He doesn't seem any more mature to me.
No. I mean, he's definitely getting bigger. No, actually, no, he's we've put him on a diet this year. He lost. We went to the vet maybe 6 months ago, and they were like, "Yeah, he needs to lose about 10, 15 pounds." And so we put him on a diet, and he's back down to what this.
You mean Kitako and I lost the same amount of weight this year? That's great.
Yeah, he's 73 pounds down from I think 86. So, but yeah, for me, like I said, just kind of cooking, spending that time at home instead of going out to a restaurant has actually been really refreshing this year.
It's always fun at the end of the year, and like 2020 was interesting because you get your credit card like end of year summary, and you always look at like, or at least for us, like I always look at how much money was spent on like eating out, and like to see the drastic difference between like 2020 and like previous years. I was kind of like, all right, like and I
That's
like
good.
to cook, so yeah, cooking's a good one.
I don't want to say how much we saved on cooking between 2019 and 2020.
It was enough to buy
so
a lot of DVDs. Let's just put it that way.
I think you're exaggerating how many I have. I think I've bought like 4 shows and maybe 10 movies. So it's not that much. It's like, and most of the movies, like I said, are $2, $3, $5. So it hasn't been this huge investment. But
Next year's
you don't have
review-
to Nick, you don't have to answer to John.
You don't have to justify it. Just tell me to shut up. It's fine.
I feel attacked.
Right.
So looking forward in the last couple of minutes, what are you guys' thoughts for 2022?
For me, I mean, it's always kind of strange. And I think a lot of people do this, like the new year comes around and, between December 31st and January 1st, there's actually nothing different. The calendar just changed. Right. But when the calendar changes, it's weird because people do get a chance to reevaluate and do a fresh start and change things. And I always love when the calendar changes. It's like that feeling. And I was always jealous of my wife as a school teacher that her job is like refreshed every September. Like once you get rid of a class, you get to start again every year. It's like a fresh start every year. And in our jobs, we generally don't have fresh starts, right? We kind of do the same thing always, and it never really changes unless you physically change your job. And I've always kind of looked at the new year like that. It's an opportunity always, even though it's just another day, it is an opportunity to reflect, change things. And I'm not like a New Year's resolution guy at all, but I do like the opportunity to just say, hey, take a deep breath and say, hey, what could I change in 2022? And I did that in 2021 and left the show. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in 2022.
Big news. So for me, I tend to agree with everything Stephen just said, but I'm actually looking forward to, even though we talked about this earlier and Stephen was not optimistic. I am optimistic that we will have in-person events in 2022, and quite frankly, I look forward to them. I am looking forward to getting back to in person and being able to have conversations with people in real life. I'm also looking forward to continuing support of the Drupal community and continuing involvement in the Drupal community, which I think our keynote on non-code contribution kind of highlighted to me how important non-code contribution was. And I think that, I'm really looking forward to possibly speaking more about that in 2022 and increasing my level of non-code contribution in 2022.
Just talking about it is a way of doing it too, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think having a new year is always kind of a good bookend. It's a good time to reflect. But yeah, I've never been one for New Year's resolutions because my opinion has been if you feel like something should change, you should just make that change. You don't need to wait for an arbitrary time to do that. You're more likely to see the change through if you just jump right in. And maybe that's why the split keyboard isn't working out. And I
think that's what we were trying to say, Nick.
I was going to make some joke about writing 2021 instead of 2022, but I feel like since the pandemic started, I don't write the date as often. Like I feel like I didn't actually write 2020 when I was meant to write 2021 last year. Like that just didn't happen.
I typically make that statement because I used to write checks for bill paying and I would write 2021, 2020, whatever. And a couple of years ago, I switched to like all digital stuff. So I wrote a check the other day and I was like, oh man, 2020, what is it now? 01, right. Had to kind of do the mental. So I fought saying that. Do you have questions or feedback? Reach out to Talking Drupal on Twitter with the handle Talking Drupal or via email at show@talkingdrupal.com. You can connect with our hosts and other listeners on Drupal Slack in the Talking Drupal channel. If you're interested in show news, upcoming Drupal camps, local meetups, and Chad's Book Corner, sign up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
You can promote your Drupal camp on Talking Drupal. Learn more about this at talkingdrupal.com/camp promo.
Thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support's greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing the Become a Patron button in the sidebar.
And Stephen, if our listeners wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way?
Visit me on Twitter at Stephen Cross with a PH.
And John, how about you?
Find me on all social networks and Drupal.org at John Picozzi, and you can find out about EPAM at epam.com.
And you can reach me pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, NICXVAN.
And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.
See you guys next week.
Have a good one.
Later.